He was the first one in the building every night, long after the last meeting ended, after the lights dimmed, after the elevators stopped moving. Luis pushed his mop down the same quiet hallways, floor after floor. Nobody knew his name. Few people looked him in the eye. To most, he was just part of the background, quiet, invisible. But what no one saw was that while they went home to rest, he went home to study. And while they talked about stocks and startups over coffee, he was learning alone by flashlight, one page at a time. They had titles. He had grit. They had plans. He had a reason. And 12 years later, he no longer cleaned buildings. He owned them. It didn't start with a business plan, or a breakthrough, or a bank loan. It started with a mop. Luis was 19 when he got the job. He had just moved to the US, barely spoke English, and had no diploma to show. But he had two things that mattered more than credentials: work ethic and time. During the day, he worked odd jobs to cover rent. At night, he cleaned offices in a downtown building. 8 floors, 5 hours, 1 bucket. He didn't complain. Not once. He knew where he came from. And he believed, somehow, that where he started didn't have to be where he stayed. Some nights, while emptying trash bins in fancy conference rooms, he'd pause and look at the whiteboards full of strategy notes. He didn't understand the words at first, but he kept reading them, copying them into a notebook he kept in his locker. He'd take old newspapers from break rooms, highlight articles he didn't fully understand, and look up every word when he got home. He downloaded free language apps, listened to audiobooks while cleaning. To most, janitorial work was just a job. To Luis, it was a classroom. And over time, something began to grow. Not in his bank account, but in his mind. A seed. The kind that takes years to bloom, but never stops rooting itself deeper each day. And while no one noticed, he was getting ready. Not to leave the building, but to rise inside it. It happened during a shift like any other. Luis was cleaning out a break room when he noticed a folded newspaper on a chair. It was old, coffee-stained, the kind people throw away without reading. He picked it up and scanned the page. There was an article about real estate. Something about rental income, property value, long-term wealth. Most of the words meant nothing to him. But one sentence stayed with him long after he clocked out. Wealth is built quietly. He read it again, then again. It didn't say fast. It didn't say lucky. It said quietly. Luis didn't know anything about investing. He didn't have extra money, but he understood quiet work. He understood patience, and he knew how to learn. That night, he opened a new notebook. He titled the first page, "How to Build Wealth Quietly." Every night after his shift, he sat down at his small kitchen table and wrote. One term at a time, one idea at a time. He Googled what he could, printed articles at the library, watched free YouTube videos with subtitles turned on so he could learn both the subject and the language. He didn't tell anyone, not because he was hiding, but because no one had asked. The building was still his job, but now his dream had moved in with him. And for the first time, when he looked at those whiteboards in the boardrooms he cleaned, he didn't just see someone else's plans. He saw his future. 5 years later, Luis made his first move. He had no financial advisor, no mentor, no safety net. But he had discipline, and 5 years' worth of savings from mopping floors, skipping restaurants, and living far below his means. Every dollar had a purpose. Every sacrifice had a name. He had been watching the local real estate listings quietly. Not the shiny condos, not the new developments, just old, overlooked properties. The kind of houses people drove past without a second thought. And then he saw it. A run-down 2-bedroom house in a rough part of town. Broken windows, peeling paint, but structurally solid, and cheap enough for someone who had scraped every cent together. He took a deep breath and signed the papers. That weekend, he didn't celebrate. He bought work gloves, a toolbox, and 3 cans of paint. The house smelled like mold and regret. But Luis saw potential, not just in the house, but in himself. He spent every spare hour fixing it. He taught himself how to patch drywall on YouTube, He watched tutorials on plumbing during his lunch breaks. He painted late into the night, music playing from an old radio. 6 months later, the house was livable. A young couple rented it, and for the first time in his life, Luis had income coming in, without clocking in. He didn't feel rich. He felt responsible. He took that money, set it aside, and started the process again. Second property, then third. The world still saw a janitor. But Luis? He was quietly building an empire. 10 years after signing the papers on that first broken-down house, Luis owned 8 properties. Not inherited. Not flipped on a whim. Built 1 hour, 1 check, 1 scraped knuckle repair at a time. His net worth quietly crossed $1 million. But nothing on the outside had changed. He still wore the same uniform, still pushed the same mop, still greeted the front desk security every night with a quiet nod and a warm smile. People started to talk. Coworkers noticed he never stressed about money, that he never asked for overtime, but never turned it down either, that he showed up early, stayed late, and disappeared on weekends without much explanation. Someone once asked him why he was still doing janitorial work if he didn't need the money. He smiled and said, "Because cleaning helped me build something, and I never forget what got me started." He never bragged, never posted about his wins. He didn't see wealth as something to flash. He saw it as something to steward, a tool, not a trophy. He didn't buy a big car. He bought tools for the next renovation. He didn't move to a better neighborhood. He started helping clean up the one he came from, and when people finally found out what he'd built, there was no headline, no viral moment. Just quiet respect, the kind you can't demand, the kind you earn. Luis never set out to inspire anyone. He didn't start a YouTube channel. He didn't write a book. He didn't even tell most of his family what he'd accomplished. But word has a way of traveling when it's tied to something real. A coworker asked him to speak at a local community center. Just a small group. Mostly young janitors, delivery drivers, and kitchen staff. The kind of people the world often overlooks. He almost said no. But then he remembered all those nights sitting alone with a dictionary, trying to make sense of words others took for granted. So he showed up. No slideshow, no suit, just a folding chair, a notepad, and a story. He told them the truth, that he had no shortcut, no secret formula, just a choice he made every single day to do more than survive. And then he said something that stuck. If you clean the world for a living, don't forget to build your own corner of it. That line rippled through the room. Not because it was clever, but because it came from someone who had lived it, floor by floor, dollar by dollar, brick by brick. From that day on, Luis began mentoring quietly. He helped people open savings accounts, showed them how to read leases, how to repair credit, how to believe they were worth investing in, even if no one else ever told them. He didn't need to be famous, he just needed to be useful. And in that, he found something better than money. Legacy. Not every story begins with opportunity. Some begin with silence, with low pay, with overlooked jobs and underestimated people. Luis didn't wait to be discovered. He didn't ask for permission to dream. He cleaned floors, he saved, he studied, he showed up. And day by day, year by year, he built something no one could take away. We often talk about success like it has to be loud. But maybe real success is quiet. Maybe it looks like a man in a work uniform, holding keys to buildings he used to mop. Maybe it sounds like someone who never stopped showing up long after others gave up. If this story reminded you of someone, a parent, a coworker, maybe even yourself, share it. Because there are more people like Luis than we think. They're not asking to be noticed, but they deserve to be seen. Subscribe to Awakened Wisdom for more true stories of grit, growth, and grace. Because sometimes the most powerful journeys don't start with a spotlight. They start with a mop.